very good number of people. I'm going to be using any other coding assistant tools other than Copilot. What are you guys using?
Gemini.
Gemini?
Cursor.
Okay.
Claude.
Good spread. Today we'll only be talking about GitHub Copilot. I haven't really investigated the other ones yet. This is kind of what I've been using a lot. So I just want to share my knowledge and what I've come from this. So we're going to talk about unlock the full potential of GitHub Copilot. So from the agenda today, we're just going to talk about what is Copilot, just to level set everybody, and then talk about what the features are of GitHub Copilot. Then we're going to get into about Copilot instructions and what they actually are. Next, we'll talk about GitHub Copilot prompts, and then finally check notes, which is where the true power of using GitHub Copilot and a lot of the other tools, but Copilot specifically. All right, so when I talk about GitHub Copilot, you can actually use it in multiple IDEs. You got Visual Studio, JetBrains Writer, you got Visual Studio Code. I will only be talking about Visual Studio Code today. The reason for that is a lot of these features I'm going to talk about haven't made it to Visual Studio or the other tools yet. The team that develops Visual Studio or Copilot uses Visual Studio Code, and that's what they use first. And the extensions, unfortunately, have to be re-implemented in each one of the IDEs. It's not like you can just, there's no common interface between the two. So that kind of, is that size okay? Anyway, so what is Copilot? It's a code assistant tool to help you write your code, like a pair programmer, kind of like a Copilot, supports pretty much any language or anything you're going to want to do code-wise. I talked about the other IDEs, and then there's Copilot has 3 modes, which I'll be demoing shortly here. There's the ask mode, edit mode, and agent mode. Ask is just like you would the traditional original ChatGPT. You walk up to an interface, you ask it a question, it gives an answer, and that's it. What you do with it after that, that's up to you. And then the next mode is an edit mode. This is a specific code changes requested by the user, and this would usually operate on the file you have opened. That's kind of where edit lines. And then the next step that you can go is agent mode. And this is where it autonomously implements complex featured projects. It will look through your whole project, scan it, and then based on what you ask it to do, it will attempt to make those changes. So those are the 3 pieces that we'll be covering from a mode perspective. So I'm just going to do a quick demo of in Visual Studio Code GitHub Copilot, just to kind of level set everyone with that. We're going to go here, that. So, zoom. This, and we're going to get rid of this. We're going to move it over. All right, how's that? Can everybody see that?
Yeah.
All right, so this is GitHub Copilot. If you're on the top, there's an icon on the top right after you've installed the extension. You'll find the extensions here. Copilot. You'll see over, yes, GitHub Copilot, and you're going to want to install that extension. There's a free tier where you'll get limited use of, completions and things like that. It's kind of enough to wet your whistle, but not enough to actually do a ton of stuff. So if you're going to get into things you're talking about now, you're going to want at least professional, which is like $10 if you're an individual and $20 if you're a company for an enterprise type. Roughly, there's obviously that price varies on your specific instance. That's where you're talking at here for this. Great. And then in the top right, that'll give you this icon, which is a chat window here. And in this case, you'll see that you have on the bottom a window where the chat will happen, and then where you can ask questions. And in here, when you click on it, you're going to see out of the box. You're not going to see all this extra stuff below here. You're just going to see an agent, ask, and edit. So ask is like you would expect. I'm not going to go too deep into it because everyone knows how to ask and get an answer from Copilot or ChatGPT, and it's basically just that. then, like I had mentioned before, edit is how you would just go in and edit and ask it about things in the current editing, which is interesting, but not quite as interesting as the rest that we'll go through. And then the next step is we're talking about agent mode. And this is where we're going to get a little bit later. I'm going to talk about it when we talk about chat modes, because chat modes exclusively use agent modes, and that's where most of the power is sitting. Recently, I'll talk about it later. And then the other piece of note in here would be, you ask me, well, hey, I hear Claude is really good. Well, in GitHub Copilot, you can see you have access to a lot of the different models. You've got GPT-4, 5 Mini, you've got Grok in here doing some preview. And then you've got a bunch of different Claude, Gemini, and O3 Mini. So if you see that 0x, that means it's included as the base. And they have, when you pay for it, you get an X number of premium requests per month. And then the 1x means when you use a session like that, it's gonna cost a premium session. But I have never run out of it. I've been using it a lot, and it's the middle of the month, and I've got 40%. I've only used 40% of what I need, so I'll have plenty. If I continue to do what I'm doing now, using it, so the amount they give you is pretty generous. You can also pay for more if you need, but I haven't seen that yet. So we got the different options. Now, Microsoft originally started out using GPT as like the main model you would use in here, and they did have options for the other ones. But they found out even Microsoft is now using, like for the people who are writing code, they're using Sonnet, Claude Sonnet. So 4.5 is what most people at Microsoft is now using, and you'll find you'll get the best out of GitHub Copilot using that one. Now, that's not to say it works all the time. There are times when you're going to want to, if your session isn't quite what you'd expect and it's not quite getting it, so just switching over to a different model may help. So certain things are better at certain things, like documentation and other things. And we go GPT versus Sonnet, which is great for, and I hear Grok is good too. I just haven't used it. So try it out. The best way is just to do it. So I'll be sticking with Claude Sonnet 4. I'm gonna that one. Okay. And even 4.5 was in preview last week, so now it's not out of preview. So it's moving really, really fast. And even in fact, with GitHub Copilot, even since yesterday and the weekend, it's grabbed already. Like they've recently added 2 weeks ago support for MCP servers, and I'll get into what those are. Now they're getting into like memory in your agent, because a lot of times if you've long requested suddenly starts forgetting things, well, you can build an agent memory, and they're building that in. If you're extension in Tool Writer now, you can publish with your extension prompts for AI and chat modes and things like that. So this is just recent as of a few days. So I would just say that this is a fast-moving space, and it's directly competing with Claude Code, which is doing similar things, and I think it's awesome as well. All right, I'll just talk about here. This is where you can select tools, and you can see here there's built-in tools. Let me get this view better. This is where they added extensions I just mentioned, and where you're starting to get into MCP servers that they've added, and you can use this in your chat modes. Like you can add one for SQL Server, and now you can ask it questions, and it'll go clear your actual SQL Server instance for you. There's a one for what I like is the Microsoft Docs. So the Microsoft Learn. How you used to get your docs? You would search Google to get to the docs. So now there's an MCP server that you can use in your chat window, where it will directly go to Learn without using Google. So that this is very latest stuff. If you use Postman, you can actually wire it up so that it'll talk to your Postman. Now you can have your agent use your Postman instance. Same thing if you're into Playwright and you're on testing, you can ask it to do Playwright things with your tools. So and this is a list that's ever growing. So there's also one for like if you're using Bicep for your infrastructure as code, there's one for that. So it's really crazy and moving fast. So these are tools where you may not want to have them all on. If you see that warning, there are 312 tools of 128, which means the more tools you add, the slower it could get. And so what you're going to want to do, based on what you're doing, if you're not doing anything with some of these other tools, you're going to want to turn off. Like you'll see when I get to my modes, I don't have all these selected. This is just everything selected, just so you can kind of see there's a lot of stuff going on here. All right. Any questions with generally about Copilot? Right. So let's jump back to the presentation here. All right, first thing I want to talk about is Copilot instructions. All right, so basically, if you're doing enterprise level applications, you're going to have a proper README file in your repository, right? You're going to have information about the project you're working on. Well, that's for humans to understand your code. You bring a new developer on and they can see your stuff. Well, AI will do a better job if it's more familiar with your code. And so the instructions is basically that README for AI. And so what you'll want to do is create this file, and then rather than every time you ask it a question, it goes out and reads all the files in your solution, then it figures out what to do. What if it had a cheat sheet? That's what your instructions are. It's a cheat sheet to your solution, and any things you want to include to help it give you better answers. I've actually used it with and without instructions, and by far with the instruction you get better answers than if you don't have it. So it's very important that you build your instructions out. And it can't be any easier these days to create it, but you'll see, to create your instruction file, because you can use AI to create it for you. So it's not like you're doing any work on it yourself. I guess that covers the specifics here. We'll just kind of dive right into showing a demo of Copilot instructions. I just want to say that in all my slides, I included a link to a GitHub repo. This is the repo for this presentation. We should start out with it. So if you pull that down, you can follow along, but I have the sample project we're working on. It has instructions, it has prompts, it has chat modes, and I actually have branches that state, like the first part of the talk, when we're creating instructions, you can jump right to that spot. When we start talking about prompts, you can check the branch out for the prompt. It's also my cheat sheet should I have demo gods fail. I'll be able to show you something that actually works. So, because chances are, we'll see. All right, so we're going to talk about the next piece. So, a little bit smaller, I think, because it's a little big. Okay, we'll go here. All right, so what I'm going to do is fun here. I'm just going to tell you where your GitHub instructions live. So we're going to think of this repo as missing a GitHub instruction. So we're going to go ask AI to help us to create the instructions. You can see it's already starting to be helpful because you can see right here, generate agent instructions. And this will, anytime you open a repo, and it doesn't, and I've seen it do it every time, whether it's there or not, but you can go to here and it's going to use AI. It's going to scan your project and let's do it. I'm just going to use this out of the box, the easiest thing you can do. It's going to run through the extensions and then it's going to start running and it'll give you a log of what it's doing. Usually this is pretty quick because this doesn't take a ton of time. Let's move it up. And so this is actually making use of something we're going to talk about in the future, a prompt. So I didn't have to write all of this. This is a really good way to get instructions, but I didn't have to write it. So someone, Microsoft, figured out what a great instruction set to do a prompt, and they created a prompt to do it for us. Now, you're going to see this here, but we'll talk about creating your own prompts in a little bit. And so you can see here, let's analyze this code, look at the big picture, and you've got some, information to help it do it. Tells it where to create agent files. You give it guidance on how to do it. Write concise, actionable instructions, avoid generic information, and you can kind of see here that it's now realize it's a Blazor WebAssembly project. It's going to understand the architecture, so now it's going through and reading all the files, and it's going to create an instruction file. And where the instruction files belong really could be anywhere, because really Visual Copilot is just looking for a something.instructions.md, a markdown file. And so then what it's going to do is the typical place you put it, just for convention, right, is .github in your root of your repo, and then you'd have Copilot instructions. Now, looks like it's still working, and you can see here that it made changes, staged, not really staged changes, it made changes that haven't been saved to disk yet. And it's not going to do any changes unless I allow it to. And there's modes where you can turn that off and have it automatically do stuff, which I don't recommend, but you can. So it talked about iterating through the file. So I'm just going to say keep this because it's fairly innocuous here. And I'm going to take this out. What? In here, and we're just going to, can everyone, you want it a little bigger?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wait, it's a little quicker. This. How's that?
Yep.
Is that better? All right, so you can kind of see here, it gives a project overview, correctly detected, it's not a Blazor website application. And it just talks about, this is the hello world for Blazor. It's literally a page with a counter. You can click 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, really. I know, but I'd keep it really basic. And then a page that looks at a hard-coded JSON file and shows you the weather. Woohoo! You can see here that it went down and said key directories. It talks about the important files. It says we're using dependency injection. And down here, common patterns, data flow. Talks about using HTTP client. And here it talks about how to run the project. So this is useful because when we get to agent modes, it actually checks the work and actually runs things. So it's not just, here's some code. It says, all right, let's make sure it works. And it does it for you, checking of it. So we're going to get there, a little preview. Let's do this. This might work better. All right. Talks about some of the, it'll read your code looking for your coding conventions and then bake it into the file. So if you like var statements, it'll probably make a comment about it. If you hate var, you can actually put something here and say, never suggest something with a var in it. So you literally have the control to tell it how to work. In fact, this one is actually not that great, actually. What I'm going to do is we're going to go, when we get my chat mode up, we're going to ask it to fix this because this one could be better. In here, I was expecting, here's the structure, like the services go in this folder, the pages go here, and things like that. So this one is a good start, but hey, it's not the best. So this will tell you where agent mode is okay, but when you start using chat modes, you can really make a lot of great thing here. So this is what instructions. So now the benefit of having the instruction is you don't have to type all of that anytime you ask it a question. It just knows about your project, and it'll operate and run faster.
You have to build it yourself though, right?
I used AI to build it. So yes, if you are the AI, you built it.
Over an existing project, but if you were starting with a blank slate, then you would want to build this.
You would. Now, I would recommend that rather than creating yourself, what you can do is you can find a lot of templates. I'm going to talk about this later. There's awesome Copilot on GitHub where they have a lot of examples of what we're going to talk about today. Chat modes, prompts, and instructions. So you can learn from other people. And I would actually start with them and then tweak it to your heart's desire. And if you find out when you're working on things, you can actually ask AI, I said, you know what? I want you to update my instruction file and never do this thing that it's suggested. And you can actually say, always do this, don't do this. And it's a living document. It's not a thing you create in the beginning and say, all right, I'm done. It's good. It's something that you can just ask the AI and say, hey, you know what? This is great. Take this core thing that I was doing and put it in the instruction file. Thank you for that. Any other questions? All right. And so we'll go there. We'll jump over here and we'll do 5. And we're going to jump over to prompts. So what is a prompt? So I'm not going to read my slides, but you can can do that, but basically a prompt is, well, what you type in, right? When you want to ask AI to do something, you write a prompt for it. Now, if you do it more than once, you're probably gonna get very frustrated because you have to type the thing in again. And then maybe you didn't type it the right way you did last time that really worked, and suddenly now you get subpar results. So what if you could create a markdown file, put the prompts in there, and then just reuse them? Or what if, like, someone in your team had a really good prompt and they want to share it with everybody? Now you can do that, and you would put it in a prompt file. And then I'll show you how you invoke a prompt when you're in Copilot, and then how to create them and where they live. And there's 2 places. And you can use prompts for pretty much anything. And typically, you're going to want task specific is the guidance that I would have. Like if you're doing code generation or you have a unit test generation, you require a prompt that's specific to each of your tasks and the things you want to do. Okay. So that's kind of the gist of what prompts are. Is there any questions around that, or I'll jump right into the demo for that? We're zipping through the main stuff because the meat of this and the really powerful stuff is the chat mode is coming up, but this is great things that set the stage for it. Okay. Now you have 2 places that you can put your prompts. Well, your repository where your code is, or in Visual Studio at the user level. Now, prompts may or may not make sense to be checked in with your repository, because if they change, they're checked in with code. Typically, at least the way I've been using them, I use them more at the user level, right? I included them in the repo here specifically just so you have an example of ones that you can go to. And awesome Copilot on GitHub, we have a ton more, and these are actually just grabbed from there. I just went in, pulled some here just for an example. So this is a .NET talk. I picked a lot of .NET stuff. Shocker. But this will just give you a quick way to see it and demo it. So what we're going to do is I'm going to say, all right, let's take like this .NET best practice, this unit test one, and we're going to talk about kind of what this prompt looks like.
When you say at the user level, like what do you mean by that? Like at in the .vs Code directory, or?
Yeah, so the .NET user directory in VS Code.
Ah, gotcha.
So I'm going to copy this code, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here and open up Copilot. Hope this window gets out of my way. There's no keys bar.
Yeah, right.
Right there. All right, so if you go to this gear or the settings up here, you're going to see there's options for prompt files, instructions, tool sets, modes. Now, technically, you can install instructions at the VS Code level. Why? That belongs in the repo, but you can't. So I'm going to go over this prompt file. And you're going to get an option here. I've created some prompts, so you're going to see them automatically pop up, but there's an option here to create a new prompt. When you do that, you've got 2 places you can put it. One place is going to be in the repository, kind of where we just saw .github prompts, and the other one is user data, which means for you in your Visual Studio instance.
That's cool.
That's what that means. So we're gonna put it in the data, user data, because that's more fun. And we're gonna just call it a name. We're gonna call this X unit on. Yeah. And now what it does, I'll just get Copilot out of the way here. And you can see here, this is where this is living is in your user data folder in Visual Studio Code. So it's somewhere on your computer, wherever that is. And it gives you just a blank prompt folder. And you can see here, prompts, you want to tell what mode it runs in this case, agent, which is the mode you're going to want. And then you want to define your specific thing. I just stole the one that I had in the GitHub repo. As an example, and I'm going to put it here. This is the type of things you're going to want to put in as a prompt. You want it bigger? Sure, why not? Oops, funky. Okay, so you got agent mode. Now here's where you get your prompt. You can say, hey, we want to do, this is the one for X unit. So you can say we were doing C# code. Oops. Best. You're talking about creating comprehensive documentation, architecture, primary construct. This must be the .NET best practice one. Shucks. Anyway. As you can see, it can be very concise, and this is where you can customize it to your code base and your preferences. We use async and await. And talks about testing standards, using in this case, MS test. And there's some things that you may not want, like it's talking about semantic kernel and integration. If that's not what this project has, you wouldn't have that in here. This is just an example of you can actually specify, use certain features of different framework. Use solid principles. Oh, word. So now that I've installed this prompt, let's go start about trying to use it, right? So I have a .NET project. So we're going to go down the path of using this prompt. So we're going to go here. I did the standard one that came out of file new project, so it's probably got some best practices that are not so great. So let's see if it has any helpful things to do for us on this. I'm just going to do something here because I want to have it do a little bit better. So when you're in Visual Studio Copilot, the way that you invoke prompts is you put a slash. Right, and so you're going to see here, there's some built-in ones that you've always had, like in here, like you've got slash, and I go down here. Because I have an NCP server and a bunch of stuff in here, I've got a bunch of extra things you don't have. Sorry. So what did I call this one? Did I call it X units? Let's type X unit fun. There we go. So here's X unit fun, which is really .NET best practice. And so we can say fix any I'll do apply best practice. And sometimes when I found using AI, sometimes you want to get really specific and sometimes you should. You should start a little more broad, saying what you want to do. Give it a little agency to do its thing. It'll surprise you. Then if it doesn't do what you want to do, then you get a little more specific and say, hey, you're not done here, let's modify it. So it's a little small. So it's going to sit here and it's going to chew on this for a little bit. It's not going to take long. It's going to now analyze this for best practices, and it's actually going to start suggesting. Let me close this off so we can see it working. In this case, because I have a chat mode turned on, it's going to do a little bit more than the base, but you can start seeing and start saying, hey, we're missing some documentation, XML documentation. So it's going to go ahead, find out wherever it lives. It's going to start sticking this in here based on what the prompt said to do, including the instructions. So this can fix a lot of the things that you have. And the nice thing about this is if you make changes to the parameters being passed in somewhere, you just ask AI to fix it rather than have to type it yourself. So it's going to sit here and it's going to, oh, maybe it's going to fix some code here. It looks like I'm missing a services directory. Whoops. Okay. It's going to, this was, the services in here is actually just sitting in the code folder hanging off of the, I may just undo this because it's way too much for this, but you're going to get the idea where it's going to actually go through and take a look at your code and start applying best practices. And you can define them or find good ones that someone else created. And talk a little more about this. Oh, I'm just seeing an agent mode right now, so that's good. So I'm not even using the do chat mode that I have. So it's going to sit here. This won't take long. There's not many files. See, now here's your opportunity to open another Visual Studio Code window and work on another project and do the same thing. And or work on documentation or do something else. So this is where you can be ultra efficient and work on 2 projects at the same time or more. Because you have this guy running and working on it. You can see here, it's 8 files have changed, and you have an option to review every change you make and either keep it or undo it. You can kind of see the window here and selectively do that. Like if you don't like, you like one but not the other, you can apply selectively for each of those.
Waiting for PowerShell approval.
Okay, so One of the things it does is you can turn auto approval on and auto approve things. But I don't like that because you can, like, you do a search and you pull some code down. What if those code have prompt instructions and now suddenly it's sending your data somewhere else? So that's one of the things where you're going to need to not turn on the easy mode here, right? You're going to want to interrogate what it's saying. So here it looks like it says, I'm missing unit tests. Oh boy. So now it wants to create a new project in the solution so I can test. Now it's going to realize an error happened. It's going to react to that error and do it a different way. So it's not just, oh, I got an error, we're done. It says, I got to do it differently. So you can see, oh yeah, I guess we're doing PowerShell, it's a bash. How many times have you got an error? You're like, oh, now what? I got to go keep Google out and search for stuff. This gives you okay. Kind of a little bit of preview what kind of chat mode does, but this does it as well. These prompts really are just using that same chat mode or agent mode that you were seeing before. It's adding dependencies that it needs. I mean, it's meant to be autonomous and doing stuff, so.
If you wanted to hold its hand a little bit more, when you prompted and you just said apply best practices, could you have scoped it and said apply best practices for folder structure? And would it have been smart enough to like do that services folder and moved it and then not run down this path?
That's correct. You can focus it in a specific area that you want it to work on. That's depending on what you're trying to do, that might be a good idea for what you're trying to do. But in this case, I was just trying to show the general piece. But yeah, get as specific as you need to solve the task you're trying to work on. Like if you're working on a task for user storing and need a specific thing, I would definitely focus it on to what you're working on. Okay. Well, let's jump. It's gonna work. I'm just gonna start introducing some of the chat mode stuff, and then when it comes back, we'll kind of see where we're at. Keep it moving along. But you kind of get the idea. It's in the back of it. Here. Shift F5 wasn't working, so. Okay. So GitHub Copilot, we're talking about chat modes now. This is where the real power of Copilot is right here. So what is a chat mode? So chat mode is a customizable AI assistant where you do tasks, workflows. You can be a specialist for specific things, or it could be more general. You can use MCP servers, and I'll get into that, what that is. So how many people are familiar with what an MCP server is? Maybe a few. Okay, so so you've got agents talking to other agents, right? So if you have, back in the day, you had one agent, one AI agent talking to you. Now, rather than having one general AI agent, you have multiple, each doing a specific thing. And you saw that demo I showed before, where I showed you there's one for Playwright, there's one for Copilot, or for like SQL Server. There's very specific ones for talking to GitHub itself. So there's MCP servers for pretty much everything. And every company out there that's in the software industry is rushing to create their own MCP server tool. Like for Figma, like if you're in Figma, there's an MCP server for that. And you can authenticate it with your Figma, and you can actually say, hey, a designer, I developed a Figma design for my front end of my app. You can actually say, rather than you trying to interpret it and put it into your code, you can actually ask Copilot to do it for you. And you could say, go to Figma, my Figma, go to my specific file and go pull that down and implement that front end. And it would then do all that work that you would have had to done manually going to different systems to do it. So that's what these MCP type servers gives you the ability to do. And then the MCP is just a spec that says, how can one agent talk to another agent? And here's what you're expected to give it, and here's what it's expected to come back. It's literally just an interface. If you went to the global AI talk, they had a really great talk about creating an agent. So I would definitely recommend, Lance Larson did a great job. Was it last week?
Yep.
To do that. And we went and dive deep. So this is not talking MCP, but literally an MCP is just a spec. And you could literally go in and say, I have my own API that does something. And I want to wrap that in an MCP server to make an AI agent to be able to read from it. It could be your AI, your API to get identity from Microsoft. It literally could be that. You could wrap that AI API in an MCP server, throw it in your if you have Azure, you can put it there, have an MCP server section. You can put it there. Now you can have your agents talk to your custom code just like that.
What does MCP stand for?
Model Context Protocol. Sorry, I should have defined that.
What, say that again?
Model Context Protocol. Who is it? Anthropic created that? Is it Anthropic? Yeah. And then it took a while for everyone to adapt it. And just to give you a note how fast this is, Microsoft or GitHub, 4 weeks ago, they finally got, the whole industry finally got a standard using that and how the different servers can talk to each other and share the different MCP instances. And what Microsoft GitHub did, they created their own GitHub repository. And what they're doing is they're reviewing to make sure there's no junk or other crap in there. And they are publishing the certain ones there. And so now that becomes available in Copilot. And there's a marketplace for this. I'll show you that. Be great.
This is a great example of the speed at which this is moving, though, because Anthropic released the spec for MCP in November of last year. We haven't even reached a full year yet, and everybody's adopting. It's like the fastest spec adoption I've ever seen. You know, think about things like OAuth 2. We still don't have great adoption of OAuth 2 that's been around forever.
Yeah.
But we have phenomenal adoption of MCP already. So it's just such a fast moving space to be in. It's cool.
I don't know, did I cover, I was talking out there that even in Copilot, things have moved really fast too. Like even this last week, if you're an extension writer for Visual Studio Code, did I cover this just now? You could write your own prompts and chat modes that will plug into AI with your extensions. And when I talk about my chat mode, we're going to talk about memory. Well, they're starting to build in memory directly into Copilot, so you don't have to hack it. What we're doing now is kind of a hack compared to official support. So that's literally 3-4 days old, like this last week. So, I mean, things are like really good. You thought tech moved fast, this moves 10 times faster. More, I don't know. But thank you for that. Any other thoughts, questions, or whether I missed the mark on, or? Okay. So chat modes are just a way to group agents together and provide instructions for your agent to do some work. And really good chat modes are like, so I'll talk about the one that I like a lot. And it's a Holloway from Microsoft, one of the developers of the Copilot stuff, wrote what he calls beast mode. I'm adopting that, but beast mode is like insane what it can do. And if you're not using something like that, you're not getting the full power of it. We'll demo that here in a moment. So let's see here. Chat modes, when you install, you can put them in 2 places, just like you did the other way. I'll talk about that. It's really just a markdown file. So you got something.chatmode.md. You can leave that in your user directory like I showed for prompts, and I'll show you again. Or you can put it in your repo. I don't know if you really want a chat mode in your repo. That seems more solution level, and you would apply that when you install Visual Studio Code, but you have options. I included in the repo just because for the purposes of demo, and it'll pick it up wherever it lives. It can live here, it can live in your user data, it'll pick it up. All right, so let's jump out of here. We're gonna do a demo and we're gonna talk about the beast mode. And I've got the repos, the links to this resource in that GitHub repo that I put in. As you can see here, you also have a link to the slides, PDF, Annex, PowerPoint. You're able to get to it from there, and we'll talk about that. Okay. One thing to note that if your Visual Studio Code is running and you're not looking at it, you can see here that it's talking to Windows Notification Center. So if you're doing other things, you will get notified that your session is done. So you can then jump back and do it. So it's not just hidden away. So let's go here. So it looks here like it made 10 file changes. Let's take a look. This is what we're looking at from just the applying best practice. So it created a test. I'm just curious if these tests work. I'm just wondering, I mean, it may, so let's,
I think it's waiting on a build, isn't it?
oh yeah, let's do a build. Let's see if the builder. So what it's doing is verifying itself. So it's not only asking to do stuff, it's actually saying, did I do it right? You told me to rename something. I renamed it. Now let's go see if I can still find that string somewhere. It's, oh, I missed a spot. And it'll iterate. So it's literally crazy. Okay, well, that's for me. Let's find out if it worked. I guess I don't have to do it myself, fortunately. I don't know if it's testing the test or who knows, but, it'll react to errors and try to fix them. So I'm just going to stop this because, you know, a lot of this stuff we'll cover in using the stop. Go. And then I didn't like anything it did today. AI did a bad job. So we're just going to undo everything it did. And it's like it never happened. So the undo in this is amazing. Like if you decide that it went on off the rails, it's something you weren't expecting, you know, you can. So some files are now untracked, so I'm just gonna get rid of them. Demo gods, I shouldn't have done the test prompt with everything. When I did my examples, I didn't do that.
So Jason, the chat modes are basically like SQL Server went out and they have APIs and they wrapped it in one of those MCP to allow people to do things better regarding SQL Server in Copilot. Is that basically it?
Allows the agent to do that, yes.
Okay.
So it's not, before you'd be human, you'd have to connect the thing.
Okay.
Now you're basically programmatically, you're allowing Copilot to actually do things like that on your behalf.
Okay. So if I want advice on T-SQL or do I use no lock here? Just anything you put in there in the context of SQL Server.
You don't need,
It's going to that chat mode allows it to be more efficient and know more about SQL Server. Is that it?
that's a general question that the
Okay.
large language model could probably answer for you without even going anywhere.
Okay.
However, if you wanted to say, do I have an opportunity in my code where there might be a scenario like you described,
Yeah.
you could actually ask it, hey, here's my database, here's the stored procedure, or here's the table, here's the structure. Go look to see if I'm missing any indexes. You could literally ask it to do that.
Okay.
Because it'll look at the columns you're querying on and do all that stuff. You could actually have it query and do that. That's where the MCP give you. Here's my actual instance. Take these best practices or look for certain things. This is where you might want to be specific.
Okay.
You could connect to SQL from any chat mode, right? Like even just the simple ask or chat one is the MCP tool that the MCP server on the SQL side that lets you talk to it,
What
right?
controls that is you're talking here, your tool selection, and this is usually an agent mode though. you're gonna select which tools you want to have access to. Like, for example, I'm gonna switch, you would turn one on or off. Like if I'm not doing any SQL stuff, it will slow you down because it's gonna say, hey, do I need to talk to the SQL Server MCP? Well, the answer is no, because I'm not doing any SQL stuff, but if it has to figure it out, it's gonna take longer.
I think it's Playwright. It has like a gazillion tools.
They do, and
That's
that's why I said 316, because I have this just wide open to put it here, but when I dial it in with the beast mode that we're gonna talk about, you'll see that there are less.
So Jason, like a scenario that might make sense here for that SQL Server scenario. So imagine in your web app that you have here, imagine that you had weather data in your SQL Server. Right now, Jason's got, just this JSON file like in his repo that's got that weather data. But imagine just asking Copilot, hey, you know what? I already have this table over in my SQL Server. Go find the weather table and then just wire this up and get rid of that JSON, that static JSON file that's in there. And so that's one of the reasons why you would want that SQL MCP server. It can just go find that and write the code for you guys.
So it's a way of talking to SQL data,
Yeah.
moreover that than just being an expert on SQL as a
Correct.
development tool. Okay,
Yeah, it's a way of
Okay.
communicating with your database.
okay.
Perfect, I could have said it
Yeah.
better.
Yeah, thank you.
So I think we're back.
But there are some MCP servers that are just exposing documentation. So that is important to, and Jason mentioned that as well. So yeah.
Microsoft Learn, which is a great site for learning about anything Microsoft stuff, whether it's Azure, whether it's the languages, the spec itself. Prior to having that MCP server, you'd have to Google it or search it or Bing it or whatever your thing is. Now you can just use an API that they built specifically for talking for it, and is way better than what you could have gotten structured in that way. So, all right, so we're going to talk about if there's any other questions. In fact, when I was looking last week, there was no MCP server section. So literally, it's when I started my talk, all we had were prompt instruction modes. Since a week and a half or 2 weeks, we've added tool sets, which are just groupings of MCP servers and things. So you, rather than toggling off one by one, like I'm going to show you, you can toggle off in a set and then servers. So things are running very fast. So let me show you MCP servers since we've been talking a lot. Get rid of the search item here. You can see here that there's in the extensions level, there's an MCP server section. If you click here, there's a marketplace. And now you can search for, I don't know, what's your favorite thing? Just scroll around these things here. So you can see if you're in Unity, there's an MCP server for that. Azure, you can add one if you're talking with Azure. Now you can actually go out, talk to your Azure instance and your tenant, and you could ask Terraform. You saw the Microsoft Learn, Azure DevOps, Elasticsearch, there's a bunch. So basically, every company is going to want to get their Salesforce, other things are going to want to get their stuff in here. So that's where you're going to be able to install them. Some of them require configuration. Right now, the configuration is a little bit wonky. Like if you have to put in an API key to get it, you got to go to the settings file, go find it in there. So it's not like depending on which MCP it is, kind of a little rough for Sketch right now for getting stuff in there and figure out what key do you need? Where do I put it? Well, even that's getting better, but all right. So we're going to start out with we're going to run the project just so you can kind of get an idea of what we're looking at. After I get after we talk about the chat mode. So let's talk about modes. So chat mode is what we're kind of talking about here. Let me pull here. I'm going to pull the beast mode here. This is literally just from the resource I'm going to include in here, but you're going to come in here. And this is the first thing you're going to want to do is you want to go in and create a custom chat mode in your user data folder. And then we're going to go beast MD or MD today. Hit enter. Now we're going to paste this in. And this one, I'm just going to walk through a little bit more because it's actually very comprehensive. And this would be an example of what a really good chat mode would give you. All right. So this is beast mode 3.1. And you start out saying, any good prompts that you write, you kind of want to put the AI in the mode of what it's to do, what's your role, what's your thing, so it narrows its scope. So in this case, you're an AI agent, and in this case, you're saying, you're gonna keep going until this thing is done. I don't want you to bug me, you're the agent, you're autonomous, you should do it. And so you're gonna come in here and say, keep going until it's resolved, before ending your turn, you'll be back to the users, you gotta keep going. Your thinking should be thorough, right, so you should, and it's okay if it takes a while. Okay. You must iterate and keep going until the problem is solved. And then you're saying you have everything you need to resolve, because sometimes agents will come back and ask you questions. We don't want to know that. You can only stop your turn when all items have been checked off. We'll talk about what that's about. It talks about saying, hey, your information's out of date. You're a large language model and you were trained up as of date. Pick that day. Stuff has changed, so you must search the internet to help answer your question, because you're by definition out of date because you're a language model. And so we're going to be using MCP servers. Why is this popped up here? Okay. Your knowledge that everything's out of date. You must do a Google search. And I actually, in my ones that I have now, I actually have a Microsoft Learn MCP server reference. So I actually have this updated. I copied this from the repo, so you won't have this. But since Microsoft Learn MCP server came out, I now said you must, if it's Microsoft stuff, you got to go to the MCP server, go to Microsoft Learn. This one just talks about going to Google to search. Always tell the user what you're doing, so you kind of get a mode of what it's doing. Okay, what else we got? Remember to check your thirst. Let's do it. Okay, you must plan. This talks about try to find the root cause versus the symptoms. So a lot of times being able to say, hey, I fixed it. And you're like, dude, that is not what the problem is. And then here you're going to provide it the workflow. How are you going to solve your solution? In this case, we're going to, if a user specifically asks you to fetch URL or information, you got to go and use this MCP tool. This is an MCP, this is a built-in tool, but use this tool to go search the internet for that. And then the next step is you need to carefully iterate through what's the expected behavior, edge cases, pitfalls, and then you want to make sure it knows it's got to explore the code base and the relevant files. Research the internet. Actually, this is the one I had that I do have it. Hey, I must include it. So research the problem Microsoft Learn, and I specifically called up MCP server. Develop a plan with a simple to-do list. So now every time it's going to do it, just like you would think about what you're going to do. You're going to build a checklist of what you're going to do, and then you're going to do a checklist. Agent will be the same thing. Anything it does, it needs to test it and debug if it needs to. So it'll actually spin up the web server. It'll go look at the console logs coming out of the browser instance. I mean, it literally would do what you would expect. Test frequently, iterate, validate. And so now we have further instructions about how do you fetch something. How do you think about the code? How do you do the internet search? How do you do the Microsoft MCP? So you can see here, I say use this MPC server, review the results. If you find you need to explore another link, go do that. Don't just give up at the first link you get. Then you say here, develop a detailed plan. Outline a specific, it's create a to-do list. And then as you do that, you mark it off. So here we go about making code changes. Before editing, you can edit changes, debugging. Here's how you would create a to-do file. So it's going to in the code includes a to-do file. And then there's instructions so that it doesn't need HTML file. Communication guidelines. This kind of fun. And the next piece is really important is memory. So because there's that checklist, what it's going to do is it's going to save that checklist into a file in your system. We're actually going to tell it where to put it. And this is where it's getting better in this area. So because we have this instruction file, it's going to actually start checking off those as it implements. I did checkbox 1. I did action 2, 3, 4, 5. And the other nice thing about it is if it ever stops or you stop it midstream, it's got this memory. And you can say, pick up where you left off. and it'll say, oh yeah, I was right here. I got halfway through, and it'll pick up. Whether you close Visual Studio and come back and come here, it'll actually say, oh, I see that you still have some stuff going on. I'll just continue where you left off. So if something crashes or other stuff, it'll help you get back to where you are. You, as the user, can ask it to add stuff to its memory, saying, hey, you missed this checkbox item. You need to check this too. So you can ask it to do things. And then in here, even because it's an agent and there's MPC servers and stuff, you can actually have it check in your code for you, create a pull request for you, do all that stuff. In this case, I told it not to because I want to review things, but you could, if you wanted to, give it instructions to like literally do everything. So that's kind of what this chat mode does. And now we're going to see how this works. So I thought it'd be fun to take the demo project that had, and Eric alluded to this, that, you know, that weather piece in there is terrible. It's literally just a JSON file. What if we decided that let's have the Copilot and this beast mode enhance the weather site to use the NOAA free OpenAI weather and actually go ahead and implement that in this solution. So first, let's see it work. I have to do this because I messed with the running of this, so I have no idea. Oops. Get rid of this. Go here. Where are you? Oops, I need the solution explorer right here. I'm going to do build. Let's start a new instance. I'm just going to see if this still runs after I messed with it. Never do things you didn't do it in your planning step. But hopefully it'll turn out okay. So far, so good. Okay, so this would be if you do file, new laser, WebAssembly application, you got a counter. Look, it counts up. You got a weather page. This is a great weather page. This is just showing data from local. So we're going to take this weather page and we're going to say, let's go get some weather data from the NOAA website. Now, if you ever tried to use and get that API, it's not fun. The documentation sucks. And if I were a human, it would probably take me a day. I don't know, just because it's just to get your head around what it's doing. And so that's what this would do. Let's stop this. We're going to work on it. We don't want to have it running when it's working. So first thing you want to do is have Copilot opened. We're going to close all of these. We're going to move this over. We're going to make sure we are in beast mode that I just showed you. Claude Sonnet 4, and I've got some staged things that we're going to do here. All right, so we're going to get really fancy and we're going to let it do everything. I'm lazy. Can't be typing all the time. I'm already starting to feel sore from this, so I'm going to copy and paste. So here's what we're going to ask it to do. I'm going to give it no other information other than this. Enhance the weather forecast feature, and I even tell it it's a page or whatever. I said, hey, there's weather in here. Go figure it out. From an NOAA API weather data set for Milwaukee, Wisconsin. If you know the NOAA one, it works on latitude, longitude. So it's going to have to figure out how to convert from Milwaukee, Wisconsin to that. Research and implement the weather API service and wire it up to the existing weather input. That's all I'm going to give it. Now this one can take a little longer, like 5-10 minutes. So probably should have kicked it off earlier, but you know what? We'll just talk through it and answer any questions as it goes. So now what it's going to do, because this is the beast mode that we have turned on, it's going to do some research. And so I didn't realize, oh, I need to go out to, and I'm going to have to be clicking allow a lot, okay? The option is you can say allow in this session or not. So let's just say allow. We're only going to get like 2 of these or 3 of these, so we'll see. So now it's going to go read some documentation. Apparently somehow knew where the official docs live. I didn't tell it, it figured it out. Okay, we're just going to look at some FAQs. All right, on the JSON file. It's going to create the models for me. It's going to do everything. And I can literally just walk off and do something else, like talk to you. Fine, thanks. I have a working example where I had it implemented and it did like over and above, not just the exact example data you have. It said, you know what, that hard code date, it really means you want the next 5 days, 7 days of data. It's gonna go pull all that in. My fingers are crossed that it'll do it. Because, every session has a little bit of variability in it and it may not come up with, but we'll see. I'm hoping, got my fingers crossed. But I can pull the solution we need. So it's gonna go through and it's gonna try to figure out what the coordinates are. I actually found the coordinates faster than last time, so that's great. I suspect it's probably gonna do something we should never do. And I think Monty's gonna yell if he finds out. It's gonna do magic numbers, it's gonna hard code it. For this instance, what I'm gonna say, that's fine, because that's not what I'm trying to get for here. I'm not trying to make this find your location and get the weather for it. This is gonna be a Milwaukee one. That would be a follow-up question. I would say, hey, now that you figured out the lat long, can you make this a little more programmatic and then have it chew on that? So you can see here, it's like, okay, now we can check current sample data and understand the structure. I must have created services folder. So now it said, all right, because we're doing best practices and I told it in the beast mode to do this, it's not going to implement the code directly in that code behind that's in the actual Razor file. I should probably show you that. Let's do that. Let's look at the weather page. Weather page. Make you go away. You can see here that here's the HTML code block and the class. When it's going to implement this, it's going to say, you know what, that's not best practice. We got to create a services folder. We got to take the interfaces and move it over here. We've got to fire up that. So it's going to do it, I would say, closer to the right way. So you can kind of see it's already started here. It's found the NOAA models. It's doing JSON naming. It's all, going through and doing the things that you would probably do yourself. It did this based on interrogating the actual documentation and a representative sample of an actual call coming back. You have to keep watching in case I miss when it asks for a prompt, because there's going to be some opportunities for me where I have to allow things. It's like when it wants to touch your environment files, it's going to say, hey, you're a sensitive file here. Do you really want me to touch this one? Because I'm trying to run a line to be careful not to take your sensitive files and export them somewhere else, or even just modify them, because that's where like a malicious actor will start modifying things like that. Oh, thank you. All right, so what do we got here? It's saying edit sensitive files. I was just talking about that. So yeah, I think I'm going to allow this. So you kind of get the deal where there's certain things that it says, all right, well, to make sure this works, I got to do a .restore, because they may have to install NuGet packages, things like that. So
It's a great assistant for somebody who only has one functional arm right now, man.
I tell you, that helped out a lot.
Yeah.
I've been using it before, but now it's really I got an incentive to do that, because I'm not as efficient as I used to be. I've got 8 more weeks, 6 more weeks, 8 total of this. Well, I can still type, and I'm getting better at typing because of the exercises but now's the time I have to be careful, because this is the time where I'll overdo it in some way and I'll undo everything that I've done. So we're gonna, oh wow, it's doing some bootstrap icons and HTML. Fancy.
If you get this an existing class, say you've got a service that's in a class but is not dependency injected, can you just say, hey, turn this, or apply best practices to this class, turn it into dependency injection and generate unit tests for it? Is that just
Absolutely.
out of the box? God, that's insane.
And if you haven't, what I found works the best, a lot of times you've implemented your own unit tests for a different endpoint or operation. And what you can do is you can say, here's how I like to mock my things and do certain things. I'm using mock or whatever you're specifically using. You can give an example. I want you to use this as a guide. This is one of your code samples or one of the other ones you've done. here's a totally new service, follow this pattern, and you'll get better results that way. Because then it'll be the results that are specific to you. It'll mock all the right things, it'll test all the edge cases.
That's kind of what I was curious about is can you, say you have a service that has, we've all got that legacy code that still uses flat files and API calls in the same block. And you can just say, hey, for all external references, mock them, and it just figures it out.
Yes, you may need a little help depending how nuanced it is. But it'll do a great job out of the box. I've seen it do a good job not testing itself, like, testing the test. I've also found that some of the times the mocking, how you set up the mocking, with the curly left, right parentheses, you have to string them together. Do you have to return a task if it's an async thing? You can just ask it to get the syntax for you and do it and figure it out. So it's really good at that.
Like even better, one of the things that's become wildly popular is I have this legacy .NET framework ASP.NET project that I'd really like to modernize and bring to .NET Core.
So you convert it and go.
Go, like, go. And it's fantastic.
All right, so it's doing a bunch of things. Let's see here. We're getting close. And one of the nice things it likes to do is like go through and actually test it. It'll spin up an instance of it, take a look at console logs and things like that. So if it doesn't do it, you can always ask it to do that as well. Right, it wants to open localhost. So here it is. It's spinning it up inside Visual Studio Code. It says, oh, wow, look here. This is great. All right, let's see if it's going to go. See if, great, the Noah here. Okay. Let's see what it's doing.
Wow, it's pretty cool.
It's not quite done yet. It's still doing its thing, but you can kind of see that it built in a refresh page options. You saw what I gave it. I literally gave it just, there's some Noah thing to do it. If you gave it like your private API and you had an API key and stuff, it would squawk about hard coding sensitive information, and it would want to do it the right way and push back on you. So it's a little bit more than just, I'm going to do what you say. It's going to say, I'm going to, here's changing the route in the code, looking for it. And you can also ask it to, like, if there's console errors, you can say, hey, I'm seeing a bunch of console errors in here, so can you go fix it? It'll spit it up like this. It'll go to the dev tools equivalent and read the output and then address it. So I mean, so not only, and it figured out I was using PowerShell, not Bash. Tried Bash and errored out and said, oh, that didn't work. It must be PowerShell. We're getting close. I think it's just doing, it'll even consider cores and other things like that. Gives you some warnings about cores related stuff. We know the site doesn't have it, but if it's your API, you might have cores or your API management. So those things you may have to address. I don't know if I had to write something to go against the Noah thing, it would take a lot longer than this. So nice pattern, interesting. They're going above and beyond today. If you're doing things like, Act and some things, it's going to do lint your code to make sure there's no linting errors. It's going to run all the things that you would run to make sure that you have good, clean code. So it made an error in what it said to run. Oh, I guess I need to run it with the project. So they can figure that out. It'll react to errors in the console. It says, yeah, I need to do the source and do the run.
Are there any best practices to do this unattended? Like you are having to kind of validate, like, no, don't just start modifying my machine. Would you run it like in a VM, or like, would there be a way to do this where you could just set it and forget it for X number of hours?
You can, the options that you have, if it comes up, I'll show you. The options you can have is do it just for this session. So if you're working on something and you know you're not reaching out to things that are, could be compromised or some, like Google internet searches and things like that, you can then, here, I'll do allow. So you have different options. So you can say, always allow this type of command, right? So it could be a PowerShell, or it could be, it's one of the commands you can say, you know what, always allow this exact command line or partial. So they do have a lot of controls that way that would help you to do it. I'm doing it this way just so we can kind of get the full experience.
Sure.
And you know, you're safe, you definitely have those options. I mean, I was just getting ridiculous. Clean bill, other stuff. Well, good news, we're at the home stretch. We're like literally there at the end, so. It's right on time, 7:08. Take a look at the code that it wrote.
You can almost process, right, in the terminal.
So we put the weather models.
One of the things that exists is in
I was just
GitHub, is
getting-
a GitHub Copilot coding agent. And so to your question of, can I just like let it go run?
So it created this weather service,
Create an issue
and some injected it,
assign it to Copilot and it just runs.
logging,
In the cloud?
Yeah.
fallback.
So
This actually added a fallback service, so fallback to this JavaScript or the JSON file. I would probably say don't do the fallback, but it did. So it did a little more logging maybe than you probably want. Did error try catches, so it's doing a pretty good job. It looks like it is done. So let's take a look. Let's spin this up and let's take a look. This time. Debug and start a new instance. Right?
Oh, yeah, if you can't do the no, it falls back to the fallback service.
Yeah.
Alright.
The current
Mhm.
implementation, a modified version of it.
Mm-hmm.
It spins up the. Uh-oh. Oh, so it was already running. We had that port number we already used. I'm just gonna do Copilot Unleashed, and I'm just gonna spin it up rather than go find which instance is running. We're just gonna kill it all. And we're gonna wait till we get. You can see the chat window, remember, it even talks about no API key needed and that. So here we go. Let's spin this up. Let's take a look at the finished result. This laser web assembly running in my browser fully. Won't fail me now. It's gonna look wrong, isn't it? This is running. There's not. All right, so we're gonna pull an audible and we're gonna show you the versions that we have. Let me try it one last time here. This time. Saw it running in that one window. We're gonna do this.
We believe you.
All right, we'll do this. So we're gonna go here. I'm gonna stash everything that I have. Sometimes it must have messed something up. Let's see. Here, let's do run. The last time it didn't do like a resilience service before, so it kind of did things differently. And so this is what the other one looked like. So this was, I did this exact same exercise a few days ago. And you can see here, pulled the day today through the Sunday. This is the actual chance of description that comes back, but the chance of rain, the description of what the weather is going to be like, precipitation, the temperature in Celsius and Fahrenheit. And you saw the new one had like a refresh button. This one didn't have it. So it kind of varies a little bit of what it gives you, but this will be an example of literally you can just point it at, hey, NOAA API and give you some results. So
The little icons, Jason, did it just figure that out? Did it get the context of that, or are the icons part of the API? Just curious.
I don't know about icons if it did that. I know it shows the colors and the scheme and
Yeah.
multi-row stuff. It all decided to do that. I
Yeah,
figured-
okay, yeah, it's, yeah, amazing.
Yeah. All right. So that is what it looked like it was running before, and I will just jump back and we're done. I'll just give you the last slide of the PowerPoint presentation. All right, so in here, I've got a link to, and I'll open that now, which would be, you got the great resources, the Visual Studio Code documentation. Here, make it action. Slide. Oh, I got it. So here we got Visual Studio Code documentation is a great place to go. That this is the documentation that talks specific to Copilot and the modes. The Microsoft, which was a good way to find out some good instruction prompts and chat modes is to actually go search GitHub for other people's items. Awesome Copilot is a great place. And then the chat mode for Beast mode is another one. And the repo for this, and this is my LinkedIn contact information. Let me show you Awesome Copilot. And you can, this is just a GitHub repo, it's community driven, and you can see there are dozens and dozens of chat modes. A ton of instructions that are great for use for examples. And then similarly with prompts, and so that's a great place that you would go for that. That's just search for Awesome Copilot on GitHub, you'll find it. And the other one you want to talk about that I just showed. Things move fast, right? So you'll just have to search for Burke Holland and Beast Mode. So why did it go that far? Parentheses in there. Here you go. So this talks about vulnerabilities. We went over this, but this would be a great more documentation about. You'll find those links there. So that's it.